everybody. I'm excited to talk with you today about a topic that has been coming up a lot for me, believe it or not, in my personal life and with my clients, and that is lying. It is such a hot button issue for most parents. It's really hard to stay calm about it. It feels awful when our kids start lying. We often start spiraling in our heads about what does this mean about me as a mom? Why is my kid like this? Lying is the worst thing ever. It's going to undermine our relationship, all of that stuff. So, I want to talk a little bit about kind of the mindset that we need to have to be able to parent effectively around lying, and then talk about what we can do about it. So, if your child is really little, and I'm talking even not as little as you might think, like maybe even 8 or younger, the line between truth and fiction is a little bit blurry for most kids. There's so much fantasy and imagination happening in kids' minds, and rightly so at this age, that um, we might see something that they're doing as lying while they just see it as telling a great story or embellishing or things like that. So if your child is young and lying, that doesn't mean we do nothing about discipline. Now, remember the whole thing that I say all the time, which is just because a behavior is understandable doesn't mean it's excusable. So we still need a discipline around lying, but hopefully just knowing that fantasy and imagination and pretend are a really, really big part of young childhood development can help you stay calm and neutral and not get upset when your child lies. The second thing I want to say when it comes to an effective parenting mindset around lying is that almost all children experiment with lying at some point in their lives. Not lying like we are talking about before, where they don't even realize they're lying, but actual lying, intentional lying. There are so many reasons why kids lie. Sometimes it's because they're just pushing boundaries and experimenting with misbehavior, just like they do with all other kinds of behaviors. Oh, what happens when I do this? What happens when I do that? Sometimes they lie because it gets emotional reaction out of us, and all human beings crave emotional intensity. Even negative emotional intensity reinforces bad behavior for kids. So if our kids get emotion from us from their lying, they're likely to do it again. So that's another reason why kids lie. Another reason why is their logical reason. It's useful to them. The utility of lying often for kids is avoiding getting in trouble. If they did something that they weren't supposed to do and they lie about it, they might get away with it, right? And the last thing that kids do sometimes, if they're it's the kind of lying where we're talking about like exaggeration and embellishment and telling fish stories all the time. Sometimes kids lie to make themselves feel better. They feel more confident and secure and comfortable with themselves when they're making themselves look good, right? So all kids experiment with lying, and there's lots of different reasons why our kids are lying. What I want to encourage you to do when it comes to actually disciplining and your child around lying and responding to lying is be okay with not knowing necessarily why they're lying. That's not to say we don't discover why later or get curious or things like that, but when it comes to responding about lying, it's very, very easy to go down this rabbit hole of like, why is this happening? What does it mean? What does my child need to hear from me so that they won't do this anymore? And that really gets in the way of us being effective. So it's okay not to know why right now. And I want you to know that you didn't do anything to make this happen. We so often our knee-jerk reaction as moms is, I must be a terrible mother because I made this happen. What kind of a mother raises a child who would act this way? What have I done wrong that my kid would be doing this thing? I want you to just completely get that stuff out of your head. It is totally useless and it's not true, okay? You didn't do anything to make this happen. Kids lie. And I just want to, I don't know, send you a little empathy dart to say, I totally get that lying is so triggering. My kids learned very early on that one of the things that would upset me the most was dishonesty. And it took me a long time to figure out that that fact alone was probably one of the biggest contributors to their dishonesty. So it's triggering when kids lie. It makes us get really scared and worried and upset, and just know that that's true and let it go when it comes to actually disciplining. Okay, so that's the mindset piece. And if you worked with me at all, you already know that I talk about three things all the time: mindset, management, and parenting. So that mindset piece is super important so that you can be effective in your discipline. The management piece, when it comes to lying, is the boundaries and structure that we instill in our family and use in our family around lying. What are the rules around lying? So get really clear with yourself what those are. And I would encourage you to start from the perspective of lying is a mistake, and that is totally normal. Making mistakes is totally normal. Having that mindset helps us stay in a non punitive approach to discipline. We're not punishing our child for doing something that's wrong and bad. We're responding to a mistake that they've made by making sure that they have an experience and an outcome that's not positive. Okay? So it's a mistake when we lie. We talk all the time as parents to our kids, or most of us do anyway, about, oh, you make mistakes. It's no big deal. We can fix it. No one's perfect. Everyone makes mistakes, etc., etc. And then when our kids lie, we don't say that stuff at all. We say, why did you lie? Honesty is the best policy. When you lie, it really hurts our relationship. I need you to be honest. Why would you do that? Etc., etc. That is not giving our kids the message that mistakes are normal. It's giving our kids a message that I might say mistakes are normal, but when you make this mistake, it's not okay. So make sure that whatever your rule is about lying, it's actually in integrity with your rules in general that you use, your general approach to discipline in your family. Now let's talk about enforcing those rules. Boundaries are only as effective as the enforcement of those boundaries. Never does it ever happen in parenting where we set a boundary and then it just gets respected and we don't have to do anything about that boundary. That will never happen. So anytime you make a rule, you need to at the same time make a plan for how you're going to enforce that rule. So, how do we do that? The first thing I want to say when your child lies to you or you think your child is lying to you is do not say you're lying to your child. Because when you do that, you immediately get in a power struggle with them. They'll say, if you're just doing a yaha, nah, yaha, nah, that's where you're headed when you say you're lying to your child. The other reason why you don't say you're lying is because it undermines your relationship and you wind up getting in this accusatory dynamic. So instead, what we do is something called trust and verify. You want to give your child a chance to tell you the truth. So you can say to your child, that sounds like it might not really be true. Notice how I'm not saying that sounds like you're lying. I'm saying it sounds to me like that might not be true. Do you want to tell me what really happened, or do you want to tell me the truth? And if the child says it really is true, now we go into that verify piece. So we're not going to say, I don't believe you. We don't say none of that stuff. We figure out if it's true or not, separate from the child. Say, okay, and go and do whatever investigation you need to do to see if it's true or not. And then once you find out that it is a lie and you can confirm it's a lie, you need to give a calm consequence to your child with a clear pathway to restoration. That sounds jargony because it is. That is a non-punitive, restorative approach to discipline. A clear consequence and a clear pathway to restoration. So you come to your child and you say something like, hey, it turns out that what you said isn't really true. If you know what the truth is, you can say, it turns out that this is what's really true. And then you can say, do you want to talk about what you said? Do you want to tell me the truth now, etc., etc.? Melissa says, what if you can't verify it? I'm going to come back to that, Melissa. Good question. So if you know it's not true, you can confirm that it's not true, then you can use this pathway where you say, turns out that wasn't true. Here's what the consequence is. Make sure if it's about a misbehavior, you need a consequence for the lie and for the misbehavior. So for example, stealing treats and lying about it. Well, in our house, the consequence for taking treats is that you need to take a break from sweets for a week. If you lied about taking sweets, now that's 2 weeks instead of 1 week. If it's something that's not really a misbehavior, but it's just a lie in general, you just give a consequence for the lie. So you say, hey man, it turns out that you lied about having eaten dinner at your friend's house. That's too bad. It looks like you're not very trustworthy right now. When I feel like you're trustworthy, you'll be allowed to do things by yourself again. And this is the clear pathway. The way that you show me that you're trustworthy is X, Y, and Z for this amount of time. So The way that you show me you're trustworthy is keeping your word without any lies for 5 days, for example. Now, obviously, those consequences are going to be fluid and changing based on how old your child is, what lies your child is taking, and all that stuff. But what I really want to hammer home here is the 3 steps: trust, verify, calm consequence with a clear pathway to restoration, right? And I want to once again hammer home this whole non punitive thing. It is a mistake that your child has made about lying. That's all it is. Remember the mindset. We got to be calm here. It's not, it's a misbehavior just like any other misbehavior. Let yourself go with that plan. If this kind of parenting, this, natural consequences delivered neutrally and calmly is your approach to parenting, it needs to be your approach to parenting across the board. There can't be any exceptions. Like, oh, all of the times that you misbehave, you get a clear consequence and I deliver it calmly with no emotion and no intensity, except when you lie. When you lie, we have a really intense conversation. I don't necessarily give you a consequence, but I give you tons and tons of emotion and time and energy, etc., etc. That's not going to work. We need to look at this in a non-punitive, it's a mistake, just like any other mistake kind of approach. And I totally get that it's really hard to do that. I'm right there with you. Trust me. I want to answer Melissa's question about if you can't verify that it was a lie or the truth. It is okay, especially I happen to know that Melissa's daughter is younger. She's in that like 5 to 7 year old range. With that situation, if you can't verify it, you can say that seems like that isn't true. Do you want to tell me the truth? And if she says actually blah blah blah, no consequence then. You just say, thanks so much for telling me the truth. I really appreciate it. And that's the end of it. No conversation about how it's so important to be honest or truthfulness is really good or lies are really bad. You just say thank you and you're done. If she says, well, no, it really is true, Mom, you can say, well, I respect that you're saying that. I don't believe that story. And if you can show me that it's true, that's great. And if not, we're just going to have to agree to disagree. And you can still give a consequence that says, I just don't find you very trustworthy right now. And you can still give her a consequence. You might, in this situation where you can't confirm something, you can still give a consequence, but maybe the consequence is a little bit of shorter period of time or something like that. If she comes to you and tells you the truth during that window of time, you could say, oh, thank you so much for telling me the truth. And now you've lived the consequence. So you always want to reward the truth, but you still need to consequence a lie, if that makes sense. Okay. This is all I'm going to say today about it. This is already a long video, and I think it's really important to just kind of lay the foundation and let you experiment, and then bring me your questions afterwards. You trying it out, it's not working, or I'm explaining it, and you're like, this isn't going to work because of this, this, and this. Send me a message, DM me, post in the group, email me, and let's talk about it.